Let me guess, you're sick and tired of trying to grow your brand on social media. You've tried every Instagram growth hack, tip and trick out there and have invested way too much time, energy and money in oversaturated social media channels, only to come to the realization that a bigger following doesn't mean an engaged one. You've had enough and are finally looking to shift your focus to what really matters, building true connection and trust with your audience. Hi, it's Michelle here, and let me ask you, how would you like to launch a podcast that creates massive brand exposure, even if you don't know a thing about podcasting and are not tech savvy? I'm talking about being able to create a professional podcast that immediately establishes brand authority and positions you as the go-to expert in your industry. I hope you just screamed yes at your computer, because that's exactly what I'm going to be revealing with you today. And look, I know that everybody says that they've got the system, they've got the goods, the silver bullets and the juice. So let me just show you exactly what I'm talking about. I run a company called the Peers Project, and we produce podcasts for brands. And yes, we are a real business with a real team of podcast experts. And over the last few years, we've worked with some of the country's most progressive brands, including leading fashion retailer Forever New and award-winning underwear brand Modibody, to produce a professional podcast series and help them intimately connect with their audience through podcasting. We've also produced podcasts for award-winning CEOs, including the fearless founder of Adorn Cosmetics, Bryony Kennedy. But rather than harping on and telling you how good we are, let me just show you. So here are some of the key results that we've gotten for our clients. For Read by Modibody, within 2 months of launching the podcast, Read by Modibody's social following increased by nearly 20%, and they saw a significant uptick in traffic to their sales page. Sarah Herbert, the creative lead at Modibody, said, "The Peers Project has done a phenomenal job. Everyone has remarked on how on-brand everything is, which is no small feat here at MBHQ." For another client of ours, Adorn Cosmetics, the results were that within 1 month of launching the podcast, we had exceeded our target number of downloads, with thousands upon thousands of listeners spanning across Australia, the US and the UK. And within 2 months, Adorn Cosmetics and Bryony Kennedy's personal social media following increased by 10% due to the podcast, and had positioned Bryony as a key influencer in the area of clean beauty, business, and imperfect motherhood. Bryony Kennedy, the CEO of Adorn Cosmetics, said, "The team at the Peers Project made podcasting so simple and totally stress-free. Everything was seamlessly organised, and it was a pleasure to work with such friendly, proactive, and insightful people that are genuinely eager to make your podcast a huge success." And of course, our client, Forever New. The results for this podcast were incredible. As one of the first Australian retailers to launch a podcast, their podcast marketing campaign received widespread global media attention. Within the first month of launching the podcast, Forever New's social media following increased by 27%, and the podcast reached audiences in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, all countries where a significant portion of their customers reside. Felicity Allen, the PR and Partnerships Manager at Forever New, said, "The whole team at the Peers Project have been a pleasure to work with. Michelle works incredibly hard to go above and beyond to cater to any requests or questions we had throughout the whole process of creating a podcast. Thank you to Michelle and the team for making our first ever podcast series a success." So look, I'm not just here making some outlandish claims. This is something that we actually do day in and day out for our clients. And from working closely with leading Australian brands across different industries and niches, I'm uniquely positioned to truly know what works and what doesn't when it comes to creating a successful podcast for your brand. So you might be wondering, well, how on earth have you been able to create over 100 high-value podcast episodes and generate over 100K podcast impressions for you and your clients over the last 12 months? Well, we've done this by using our go-to 6-step podcasting system that I'm about to reveal today. Now listen, this is the single most exciting and highly effective system to start and launch a successful podcast in 2020. And it's truly a new and unique opportunity, unlike anything you've ever seen or heard of before. And if you hang around until the end of the training, I'm going to be sharing with you a podcasting cheat sheet that summarizes everything we're going to be covering in today's training so that you don't have to worry about taking notes and can just stay focused. Now, before I reveal it, let me just say that this is not for everybody. In fact, very few people will be allowed to get in on this. I have to be ridiculously selective about who I share this with, for reasons you'll understand in just a moment. But before I tell you exactly what this podcasting system is, let me tell you a quick story and give you the 6-second rundown on me and why you should even listen to a single word that comes out of my mouth. My name's Michelle Kidnall, and I started out in podcasting several years ago with my little DIY podcast, which at the time was called The Peers Project. I would hustle day in and day out and stalk down leading entrepreneurs, including those on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and convince them to come on my little podcast in the hope that someday this podcast would lead to something bigger and better. Fast forward just 3 short years, and my little DIY podcast has turned into a leading Australian podcast production agency. Last year in 2019, we won the AGTA's Small Business Branding Award, and this year produced the first ever Australian women's fashion retailer podcast. Yes, it's been a crazy few years. And all of our success boils down to this go-to podcasting system that I'm about to share with you. Now, I just need to flag something with you real quick. I cannot promise anyone on this training any results with their podcast, as I have absolutely no way of knowing how you'll apply what you're about to learn here. You know, most people, they never take action on any of the trainings they receive. That's why most people, they never really accomplish much. All I can do is show you this amazing, foolproof podcasting system so that you can start and launch your very own podcast and take your brand to a whole new level. But the rest is up to you. Now, let's dive straight into it. Well, as I mentioned, there are only 6 steps that you need to know in order to successfully start and launch your podcast. And here they are. So step 1, establishing your podcast purpose. Step 2, transforming your message into a binge-worthy series. Step 3, the go-to podcast equipment for crystal clear audio. Step 4, how to brand your podcast and get to a new level of intimacy with your audience. Step 5, how to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And step 6, the key pre- and post-launch podcast marketing strategies that will automatically make your podcast a raging success. So let's dive straight into step 1. Step 1, start with why and how to establish your podcast purpose. Let's get real. Any man, woman or dog can ramble into a microphone and call themselves a podcaster. But to create a truly powerful podcast, you need a resounding purpose, a key message, and a solid game plan. To establish your purpose, you need to know, firstly, why you want to start a podcast, secondly, what your ideal listener needs, and thirdly, how your brand is uniquely positioned to serve them. So why do you want to start a podcast? Do you want to position yourself as an industry expert? Do you want to leverage podcasting to boost brand awareness? Do you want to target a segment of your customers who are avid fans of podcasts? Do you want an intimate way to share your story? Or is it all the above? Take the time to list all of the reasons why you want to start a podcast for your brand. Remember, there's no right or wrong answers, peers. Getting clear on your why now will help you make key decisions about your podcast later down the track. It'll also keep you laser focused on your end goal. So podcasting is just like a super intimate conversation with a friend, but that friend is actually dozens of strangers. Knowing your audience will help shape all of your communication, from your tone of voice to the type of content you produce for your podcast. But it's not enough to just know who your audience is. To create a podcast that truly elevates your brand, you need to speak directly to the desires and the frustrations of your audience. You want your audience to walk away from your podcast feeling seen, heard, and understood. This is ultimately what will build their trust in your brand. So, to know your audience on an intimate level, start by focusing on your ideal listener. Ask yourself, if I could attract anyone's attention, who is the one person that I'd want listening to my podcast? Picture this ideal person in your head and then list down everything you know about them. Start with the basics: name, gender, age, career, job, income, and then think about their desires. At this stage in their life, what do they want most in the world? Maybe they're a business owner who desperately needs more sales. Maybe they're a beauty salon owner who wants to stay on the pulse of the latest beauty trends. Perhaps they're a teenager who wants to clear up their acne and have perfect skin. Or maybe they're a creative freelancer who is sick of trading time for money and they want freedom to work when they want and how they want. Once you've listed those desires, think about what's getting in their way. What limitations or obstacles are they facing that's preventing them from reaching their goals? Be as specific as possible when identifying their frustrations and pain points peers. The business owner may not know how to sell properly or generate leads. The beauty salon owner may not have enough time on their hands to do in-depth research on the latest beauty trends. The teenager may feel confused and overwhelmed by the thousands of skincare products in the market. The creative freelancer may be feeling tremendous self-doubt and paralyzed by anxiety. By identifying your ideal listener and diving into their pain points, you will have a much deeper understanding of who you're speaking to and how you can best add value. To attract and retain an engaged listenership, your podcast needs to add tremendous value to your ideal listeners' lives. The best way to do this is by identifying how your brand is uniquely positioned to serve your audience. Specifically, what problems can your brand solve? So firstly, it's important to get really clear on your brand values. Every piece of content you produce for your brand has to align with your messaging and your values. A podcast is no exception. So to determine your brand values, ask yourself, what does my brand believe in? What does it stand for? What does my business resonate the most with? Then think about how your business can solve your ideal listeners' frustrations. Does your brand specialize in lead generation and sales techniques? Perhaps you can teach other business owners how to increase their revenue using your tried and tested methods. Do you sell skincare products that are specifically formulated for teenage skin? Perhaps you can educate teenagers on their skincare routine and how different products work on different skin types. Have you been running a successful digital business for the past few years? Perhaps you can share how you were able to grow this business without trading time for money. Now we're going to tie all of those elements together to determine your podcast purpose. You want to be able to clearly articulate your purpose into a single sentence. I want to start a podcast for insert audience and pain point because insert why and brand values or how your brand solves their pain point. For example, I want to start a podcast for young teenagers struggling with acne because I want to position my brand as a leading expert in teenage skincare, and my business believes in empowering teenagers and boosting their self-esteem. Once you have a clearly defined purpose in front of you, you'll be able to make decisions about your podcast that are powerfully aligned with your brand values and your goals. You'll also have a clearer understanding of what you are uniquely positioned to talk about on your podcast. So, step 2. Transform your message into a binge-worthy series. How do you go from abstract purpose to a winning podcast series? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore right now in step 2. So in this step, we're going to choose your podcast topic, aka what you're going to talk about. The best podcast topics align with the needs of your audience, so it's important to look back to your trusty purpose and your ideal listener. Once you have your purpose and ideal listener profile in front of you, ask yourself, what pain points does my ideal listener have that my brand can solve? Again, think back to how you and your brand are uniquely positioned to serve your audience. Is there something in your brand or personal story that helps you empathize with your ideal listener? And what is the message or legacy that I want to leave behind? If you could speak to an audience of 10,000 people and you only had one chance to share your message, what would you want them to know? So let's say that this was the purpose you identified early on. I want to start a podcast for teenagers, aged 12 to 18, struggling with acne because I want to position my brand as the leading expert in teenage skincare, and my business believes in empowering teenagers and boosting their self-esteem. So your ideal listener is a teenager, aged 14. Their pain point is their struggle with acne. Their desire is to have clean skin. Now, let's look at how your brand can serve your audience. Since you're in the skincare industry and you formulate products for teenage skin, you can serve them through your products and your expertise on skincare. You can solve their pain points by educating them on what acne is, how to best structure their skincare routine, and everything you've learned after creating skincare products. Your personal story is also a vital part of your brand. The reason you started your business in the first place is because of your own experience with teenage acne. You were overwhelmed by the amount of complicated skincare products out there, and you couldn't find any guidance or expertise. Your acne impacted your self-esteem, and you wish you had had more confidence. The key message you want to leave behind is that you want to empower teenagers to be in control of their skincare routine and confident about their appearance. As a result, your podcast topic can be around helping teenagers combat acne and reclaim their confidence. This would align with your goal to position your brand as the leading expert in teenage skincare and align with your brand's core values and messaging. When you combine how your brand can best serve your audience and the message you want to share, you'll be able to identify a winning podcast topic. Once you've identified your podcast topic, it's time to narrow in on the unique value your podcast will offer to your audience. Because here's the thing, peers. One topic can give rise to many different incredible podcasts. Saying your podcast is about helping teenagers combat acne and reclaim their confidence could mean many things. It could be a show that focuses on tips and tricks around skincare and how to be more confident. Or it could be a podcast documenting your story of how you struggled with severe acne when you were young and how you got through that period of your life, both physically by choosing the right skincare products and mentally by redefining your self-worth. What you ultimately choose to focus on will depend on your purpose and your ideal listener. Ask yourself, what would my listener benefit from the most? Do they need tried and tested strategies to get them from point A to B? Do they need to hear other people's stories and journeys? Do they need a more in-depth focus on a particular area or just a high-level overview? Do they need information and insight on a particular topic? By clearly identifying the one main thing your podcast offers, listeners will know exactly what they're going to get when they tune into your podcast and exactly how the podcast will benefit them. One major benefit of podcasting is the ability to wax lyrical to your heart's content, but you still need to implement a cohesive structure to the flow of your content. The most impactful podcasts have a clear-cut format and a style that clearly conveys their message. So to get started, here's some of the most common podcast formats in the audio sphere: solo, interview, and hybrid. So the solo format. This format involves you delivering a monologue into a microphone by yourself. This is a great format if you're the CEO or a solo founder of your business and your why is to become a thought leader or an industry expert. Then we've got the interview format. As the name suggests, this is where you invite guests onto your podcast to be interviewed. The interview style is an incredibly common and powerful podcast format as it exposes your audience to different perspectives and can open your brand to an entirely new audience. It's great if your why is to expand your professional network. Hybrid format. This is a combination of the solo format and the interview format and includes episodes where you interview guests and episodes where it's just you and the microphone. This is a great format if you have a lot of expertise on your hands and you also want to leverage the knowledge of other experts. So once you've chosen your topic and your format, it's time to decide how often your show is going to air. Will it be every week, every month, twice a month? The possibilities are endless. Make sure it's something that you can realistically commit to. Sure, you can shoot for the stars and air 2 episodes a week, but is that something that you can actually achieve with your busy schedule? Now, how long should your podcast episodes be? There is no perfect answer to this question, peers. What is considered the ideal length depends on your audience and, once again, your podcast purpose and topic. The questions you should be asking yourself are, how long would it take me to share and cover the most important points of each episode? And what would suit my target audience? Remember, the length of each episode can also be flexible. And yes, you should try and keep each episode consistent and roughly at the same length each time, but you don't have to beat yourself up or bend over backwards if your podcast episodes go over time or aren't long enough. So step 3, the go-to podcast equipment for crystal clear audio. With 3.5 million podcasts out there, people are now conditioned to expect high-quality audio. Distracting noises in the background, voices fading in and out, and echoey sounds can make your listeners scram faster than you can say podcast. If ever there was anything to invest in, it's this beautiful, crystal clear audio. So selecting the right equipment and audio setup involves, firstly, getting the right microphone and headphones, and secondly, deciding on an online recording platform and editing software, all of which we're about to cover right now. And please note, peers, all of the links we're about to provide to our equipment and software of choice will be in the podcasting cheat sheet, which you'll receive access to at the end of the training. So make sure you listen to the very end. For a great sounding portable microphone, you can't go wrong with the Audio-Technica AT2005 USB. It plugs straight into your computer and comes with a handy desk stand. Even better, it's designed with inbuilt room rejection for good sound quality in a range of environments. Now for headphones, you can use your regular headphones to record your podcast, but if you want to invest in professional tech, then the ATH20X headphones are your best friends. These headsets even feature sound isolating design so that you can ignore the outside world and tune in to the sound of your voice and your podcast. And now recording platform. To record your episodes online, you can use the podcast recording platform called Squadcast. Squadcast is by far the best in the market, with a focus on producing the highest quality audio for your podcast. You can sign up to Squadcast for as little as $10 per month. And now for editing software. We recommend you start out using Audacity. It's 100% free open source software that has easy to use audio editing functions and some really decent inbuilt effects. In short, it provides all the editing tools you need to simply edit your podcast. And now, the quality of your audio will also depend on where you record. Sounds from traffic, fans, air conditioners, and people in the background can seriously impact the quality of your audio and deter listeners from coming back. So if you're recording at home, go to each room, close all of the windows and the doors, and listen to the level of noise outside. The quieter it is, the better the recording environment, and the closer you'll be to having crystal clear audio. Carpeted rooms work best, peers, as do closets and pantries. Now that you've found a quiet place, you also need to make sure that the sound in the room doesn't interfere with your audio. Fun fact, peers, sound is a pressure wave. Whenever you speak, the sound travels from your mouth, bounces off the surface in the room, and then is returned to the microphone at all different times. This is what causes the icky echo you sometimes hear in lower quality recordings. Words can get muddled, there can be a build-up of ugly frequencies, and it sounds plain unprofessional. So what can you do to minimize these room reflections? The answer: absorb as much energy as possible. So the best practice to reduce the reflective surface area in your room is by covering it with absorptive material. And you can do this by standing up a mattress against the wall to absorb the sound, or throw a blanket over the tables if it's close to your microphone position. So if you want to go the extra mile, you can purchase a portable isolation booth. A really great product is the Auralex Mudguard version 2. So let's face it, you're a busy person, and so are the potential guests you're hoping to invite onto your podcast. To maximize efficiency, we recommend designing one day a month to interview your guests and record multiple episodes in one swift go. These are what we fondly dub our production days. Start by choosing a relatively free day and block out a time period to do all of your recordings, around 6 to 8 hours. Depending on how long your podcast episodes are, you'll likely be able to record 4 to 6 episodes in one day. If you're creating a weekly podcast, that's a whole month's worth of content that's nearly ready to go. If you're creating an interview-style podcast, you can schedule interviews super easy using an app called Calendly. It works like a virtual appointment booking system and lets you choose what days and times you're free. Simply send your personal link to your guests and they'll be able to pick a time that suits the both of you. So step 4, branding your podcast. Anyone can produce any regular old audio edit, but the best podcasts provide an experience that the audience can identify and relate to. This includes everything from your tone of voice, your podcast cover art, and even the background music. With 500,000 podcasts in the audio sphere, a solid brand strategy will keep your listeners coming back for more time and time again. The words you choose and the way you project them represents the personality of your brand. It communicates your values, your position in the market, and your brand characteristics. A strong, consistent brand voice will ensure your message cuts through the noise and leaves an everlasting impact on your audience. If your brand already has a tone of voice that is engaging and recognizable, then be sure to stick with it when you're creating your podcast. But if you've yet to establish a tone of voice or you want to shake things up for your podcast, then let's dive in, shall we? Start by imagining your podcast as a person. Then ask how you'd like them to be perceived. Do you want them to be warm and humorous, serious and practical, confident? Remember to think about your target audience and the language they like to use. Your voice should resonate with them and be something that they're going to respond to favourably. Once you've identified what your target audience likes, ensure that every touchpoint in your podcast reflects your brand. From your show notes to the intros and outros, your unique brand voice should be present throughout your entire podcast. Although podcasts are mostly audio-based, it helps to have a strong visual identity. After all, this is what will be instantly recognisable when listeners are scrolling through Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You want to create an identity that stands out, but also suits your brand image. A visual identity can be applied to your podcast cover art, social media graphics for your podcast, and any branding assets you create. Here, we're going to specifically focus on your podcast cover art. So here are a few things to consider when creating your cover art. Podcast logo, colours, size, images. So your podcast logo. Your logo is a key representation of your podcast and will help establish a sense of authority and familiarity with your audience. Existing brands can use their current logo or use this as an opportunity to get super creative. Remember, the more unique, the better peers. Colours. Colours can evoke a strong emotional response in people, so be thoughtful in your selection. Try to select colours that complement each other and be conscious of the different effects colours may have on people. For example, red tends to evoke passion and excitement, while light blue evokes tranquility. Your colour selection should also be drawn from your logo design in order to maintain consistency across your brand. Your podcast cover art does come with restrictions, but this can force you to get super creative and intentional about what you're going to include on the cover. For best practices, this is what Apple Podcasts suggests. The images on your podcast cover are likely the first thing that will grab your listeners' attention. If you are the host of your podcast, then an image of your face will evoke a sense of familiarity with the audience. An alternative to a headshot could be an interesting visual graphic that communicates something about the podcast. Make sure to include the name of your podcast and your logo in the cover art too. A design tool we highly recommend for DIY podcast cover art is Canva, or you can reach out to graphic designers on websites like Fiverr and Upwork. So step 5, get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, one of my favourite steps, Piers. You've now set your goals, identified what makes you special, figured out what tune you'll be singing, and recorded an episode or 2. Now you're ready to launch your podcast baby to the world. So, before your podcast can be featured on the likes of Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you need to choose a platform that will host your podcast. Podcast hosts store your audio and allow listeners to subscribe, listen, and download your podcasts. Some even have extra snazzy features like analytics or tools that help you grow your audience. We love hosting our Peers to Peers podcast, as well as all of our client podcasts on Acast Open, which is part of the world's largest podcasting company, Acast. It's easy to use, provides great analytics, and distributes the shows onto Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. So once you've chosen your podcast host, you can start submitting your podcast onto the major podcast directories, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Apple Podcasts is the #1 podcast directory in the world and is used by the majority of people to find podcasts. So be sure to submit your show to Apple through your hosting platform straight away. But remember, not everyone has access to an iPhone. Spotify and Google Podcasts are rapidly expanding their podcasting game, and you can get your show in front of billions of Android users. By broadcasting your podcast on every platform, you'll maximize your brand's reach and ensure your message is going straight into the ears of your ideal listener. All you have to do is follow the instructions provided by your hosting platform on how to submit your podcast to each distributor, and you'll be well on your way. Again, Acast Open makes it really simple and easy. So warning, It can sometimes take up to 2 weeks for your podcast to be approved on Apple Podcasts, so make sure to allow ample time for approval before selecting a launch date. There's nothing wrong with leaving your show on the podcast hosting platform and available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but if you're looking to create a podcast that stands out from the pack, it's best to invest in your own podcast website. Having your own website is like owning a prime piece of real estate on the internet. You get to control how it's decorated, what juicy details you're sharing, and where your audience goes to dig even deeper into the world of information you're providing to them. A great podcast website should include your podcast episodes, a link to subscribe, an embedded audio player so listeners can start tuning in right away, information about the host and the show, and links to your guests' social media and to other pages on your website. So here are some examples of some of our client podcast websites. And websites creators we love include WordPress, Squarespace, and Wix. These sites make it super easy to DIY your own snazzy podcast website at a relatively low cost. If you already have a website for your brand, don't worry about creating a separate website. You can easily create a new separate page for your podcast. And now, onto the final step in the 6-step process, peers. I'm so proud of you for making it this far. So step 6, ready, set, launch. Start spreading the news, peers. By now, you would have created a powerful branded podcast, set a launch date, and now it's time to share it with the world. But first, no one wants to launch to crickets. You want to share your podcast debut with an engaged audience who are excited to hear what you have to say. So here are our top strategies for cultivating an eager fan base long before your first episode even drops. So firstly, sending out an email blast. If you have an email list, send out an email blast letting everyone know about your show, where they can find it and when you're going live, and encourage them to be an early subscriber. Secondly, drop your podcast trailer. Record a short but epic trailer explaining what your show is about and what listeners can expect if they tune in. You can then create posts and stories on social media to start spreading awareness amongst your followers. Promos should also start to intensify as it gets closer to launch date. Now remember, the rule of 7 states that consumers need to hear a message 7 times before they will consider taking action. So be sure to think of as many creative ways to promote your podcast so that your ideal listener is aware of your upcoming launch. And lastly, host a giveaway. Everyone loves the chance to win a freebie, so consider hosting a giveaway to increase subscribers and boost reviews. It can be as simple as asking your followers to subscribe to your podcast and share a screenshot of your trailer to their Instagram or Facebook stories. Then they can win one of your amazing products or one-on-one coaching time with you. And now, launch day. Congratulations, peers. Your podcast now has an official birthday. Launch day is when you should be throwing a virtual party and letting everyone know that episode 1 is live and kicking. Now, don't be afraid to go crazy on your social media channels to promote your new podcast. After all, this is your labor of love and it deserves to be heard. As best practice, we recommend uploading at least 2 episodes on launch day. This gives listeners more content to enjoy and helps them form a positive opinion fast. Apple Podcasts assesses the amount of times people spend listening to your podcast and the number of downloads. So if you're hoping to be featured on the new and noteworthy section, having more than 1 episode up can help increase your chances. Hold the Pinot. Just because your podcast has finally made its debut into the world, it doesn't mean that the promotion phase is over. In order to reach as many listeners as possible and build up your fan base, you need to consistently share your podcast to your potential audience. For those who are worried that this may come off as shameless self-promotion, think of it as this. You're not promoting yourself, you're sharing a message that you know will help tons of people. It would be a great disservice if you had all of this valuable information and only kept it to yourself, peers. So here are our best strategies for promoting your podcast episodes. Firstly, be creative on socials. Sure, you can post a single image of your cover art on Instagram, but why not create a post that stands out? You can use a tool like Wave to create a captivating audio clip, or you can upload a short video of your interview. You can even create valuable or inspiring quote graphics for your podcast using a tool like Canva. Secondly, capitalize on your guest's audience. If you feature guests on your show, they can help you in many more ways than just providing valuable expert information. Unless your guest has completely sworn off social media, then chances are they'll have a digital presence and their very own Insta, Twitter, LinkedIn following. Attract their audience by encouraging your guest to share your podcast on their own platforms. You can do this by creating quote cards of things they've said, using their picture in your social media promos, or uploading a video snippet of the interview. Remember to tag your guests so that they can easily reshare any content onto their platform. That's it, peers. Congratulations, you are now a podcaster, and more importantly, a powerful brand builder. So to recap, here are the 6 steps that we just covered to start and launch your podcast. Firstly, establishing your podcast purpose. Secondly, transforming your message into a binge-worthy podcast series. Thirdly, the go-to podcast equipment for crystal clear audio. Step 4, how to brand your podcast and get to a new level of intimacy with your audience. Step 5, how to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, the essential pre- and post-launch podcast marketing strategies. Now remember, right at the end of this training, we're going to be revealing where you can get your free podcasting cheat sheet with a recap of everything we've just covered. So remember to listen until the very end. So now you know exactly what it takes in order to take your brand to a whole new level by creating a powerful podcast. How would you like for me to not only teach you every tip, hack, technique, unfair advantage and secret, but everything that's currently working for me today and everything I've done up until now to create over 100 successful podcast episodes and generate over 100K podcast impressions for me and my clients and get actual results? But how would you like me to go a whole lot deeper and actually give you every single part of this turnkey system for you to apply directly to your brand's podcast? Yes, that's right. This complete step-by-step and turnkey system is ready for you to simply plug in and adopt for your own podcast so that you have the kind of podcast that will immediately gain massive brand exposure. Introducing Podcast Power 101. Now, Podcast Power 101 is a new and completely unique 8-week training program and turnkey podcasting system that teaches you exactly how to start and launch a wildly successful podcast for your brand using proven and actionable frameworks and strategies. And this thing is seriously highly effective and goes a whole lot deeper than what I've just shared with you today. You see, up until now, in order to get access to this unique podcasting system, you would have to be a client of my agency, The Peers Project. And to get access to my team, it would cost you a bare minimum of $2,500 per month as a retainer, starting on a 6 to 12-month contract. So that means you'd have to spend a minimum of $15,000 with us for us to even consider working with you to produce and manage your podcast. And it would be worth every single cent because we deliver above and beyond for each and every single one of our clients. That was your only option to get your hands on this unique podcasting knowledge and system. But not everybody has $15,000 to invest in their brand straight out the gate. But nonetheless, this was the only option. However, the cost to get access to Podcast Power 101 is not even a fraction of that. And here's what you're going to receive. So Module 1, setting the foundation. A high-performing show starts with a rock-solid foundation, and in this module, we share everything you need to know to lay the groundwork for your podcast and stay focused throughout your entire podcasting journey. And in this module, you'll learn our signature 3-step process to nailing your podcast concept and amplifying your brand's reach, how to effectively define your brand story. Get this right and everything else will be a piece of cake. Our game-changing exercise to finding the message you are uniquely positioned to share. How to identify a winning podcast topic that adds value to your audience and aligns perfectly with your brand. And in Module 2, nailing your podcast strategy. So once we've pinpointed the key message of your podcast, we dive deep into the nitty-gritty of your show. Who's your target audience? What's the best podcast structure for what you're trying to achieve? And how do we transform your message into a podcast series that will quite literally blow up your brand? We cover it all. So in this module, we do a deep dive into the best formats for your branded podcast and how to pick the perfect format for your series. We provide our must-do target listener exercise that will connect you instantly with your ideal listener and make them genuinely excited to hear from you. And we reveal how to create a compelling podcast synopsis that will instantly convert listeners to raving fans. Now, Module 3, Building Your Brand. And in this module, we will help you develop your podcast brand, from naming your podcast to creating a stellar intro and designing your visual identity. We cover everything you need to show off your podcast to the world. So in this module, we explore how to establish a tone of voice for your podcast that's perfectly aligned with your brand, how to create a professional intro and outro for your show with the right call to actions. This will shape the success of your entire show. How to design scroll-stopping cover art that stands out from the masses, and where to best source your podcast music and use it to convert listeners to loyal fans. And in Module 4, it's all about planning your content. Fail to plan and you'll plan to fail. In this module, we'll teach you how to come up with your episode ideas so that you never run out of things to say, and how to brainstorm and structure your content in the most impactful way. With a solid plan in place, you'll be able to wax lyrical to your heart's content. So in this module, we'll reveal how to plan out an entire month's worth of podcast episodes so that you never have to worry about running out of high-value content, how to constantly generate new topic ideas so that your podcast can be considered innovative and one-of-a-kind by your ideal listeners, the exact strategies we use to invite influential thought leaders on your podcasts, and how to add them to your network, and lastly, how to create episode briefs to keep the conversation focused and on point without having it sound scripted. So in this module, we teach you everything you need to know to host a successful podcast production day and how to best edit your audio recordings. By the end, you'll have an in-depth understanding on how to record your podcast and produce a crystal clear audio edit. So in this module, we deep dive into the podcasting equipment we use to create high-quality podcast recordings so clear your listeners will think you're recording in a studio. And we also reveal how to plan your podcast production days for maximum efficiency. And lastly, our exact step-by-step guide that even a tech newbie can follow to easily edit your podcast recordings and make them sound flawless. Now, Module 6, Maximize Your Marketing. So in this module, we'll take you through all of the post-production strategies you need to implement to maximize the marketing for your show. You'll walk away knowing how to best name your podcast episodes and effectively market your podcast to the masses. So in this module, we walk you through how to create powerful show notes that can be effortlessly repurposed as blog content, and how to create scroll-stopping marketing assets that will genuinely excite potential listeners and turn them into loyal podcast fans. And now in Module 7, it's all about hosting and distributing your podcast. So in this module, we'll show you the best format for your podcast and the exact steps you need to take to successfully submit it to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and beyond so that you can get your message, your brand, and your name out there as quickly as possible. So in this module, we'll provide an in-depth walkthrough on how to use our go-to podcasting hosting platform and make your episodes go live without a hitch, and our behind-the-scenes secrets to get your podcasts listed on the most popular podcast directories so that you don't have to panic on launch day. And then in the final module, Module 8, it's all about time to launch. So congratulations, by now you'll have created your very own podcast, 8 weeks in, and now it's time to share it with the world. And in this module, we reveal our tried and tested pre and post-launch strategies to help you launch your podcast with a bang. We'll bring the tips and you bring the bubbly. So in this module, we teach you how to attract your ideal podcast listeners and automatically turn them into loyal fans and see your downloads soar. We teach you how to gain excellent ratings and reviews so that anyone that comes across your podcast will be instantly blown away and inclined to listen. And lastly, we teach you our go-to strategies for marketing your podcast post-launch and how to do it without annoying your audience. And that's it, peers. That is our game-changing 8-week podcasting training. Now listen, to put it plainly, we've got some of the most effective and advanced strategies for creating a professional podcast and positioning you as the go-to expert in your industry, no matter what industry or niche you're in. And I reveal the entire system, plus every tip, tactic, strategy, and unfair advantage. This stuff is the stuff that is working right now, and I'm going to be revealing it all inside this program. And not only do you learn exactly how to start and launch your podcast, but you build your podcast along the way. So at the end of the 8 weeks, you'll literally have launched your podcast baby to the world. Exciting, right? And to make things even better, if you join today at our special pre-launch price, you'll receive 3 awesome bonuses. So bonus number 1, the go-to podcast analytics dashboard. So this dashboard is your one-stop shop for measuring your podcast performance each month. From the average listening time per download to the highest performing episode, you'll be able to easily track exactly how many listeners are tuning into your show. Bonus number 2, the content planning template. Say goodbye to fidgeting with spreadsheets. This template will make it as easy as punch to plan out your episodes. All you need to do is just plug in the episode topic and your guest's name, and you'll have a bird's eye view of your entire content marketing strategy for the quarter. And bonus number 3, access to our exclusive Facebook group. Don't podcast alone, peers. In our exclusive Facebook group, you'll join other like-minded entrepreneurs who are on the same exciting podcasting journey as you are. You'll also receive access to live group coaching calls every month where you'll be able to ask me all of your podcasting questions. So before I reveal exactly how you can get in and actually sign up to the course at our special pre-launch price, I'd like to point out that really you've got 2 options here. So you could go through door 1, which is trying to do this without a proven roadmap, without the answers or proper education, procrastinate and tell yourself you'll do it later, guess your way through this and probably end up not getting very far, play Russian roulette with your brand's future, keep throwing away your money by investing in oversaturated social media channels, hoping and praying something will change for you. And look, you know you can go back to doing what you've always done and what you've been doing, and the truth is, you'll just continue to get exactly what you've always got. And let's face it, if you were really happy with your current situation, you wouldn't be watching this right now. But you are, and this tells me that you're ready for change. And if that's true, then going through door 1 makes absolutely 0 sense. Now that brings me to door 2, and really, you can just bite the bullet and accept that to build a highly engaged and successful brand online in the fastest time possible, it just makes complete logical sense to get into podcasting and get a proven roadmap from someone who has already gotten to where it is that you want to be. So if you enter door 2, you'll simply get the proven system and roadmap. You'll give yourself every possible advantage. You'll get every tip, hack, shortcut, and leg up, and you'll eliminate the guesswork and get it right the first time. You'll skip the trial and error and the insanely costly learning curve, and you'll choose the proven path to success. And you'll avoid the heartache of continuing to waste your time and money on social media that's getting you no real result other than an unengaged audience. And you'll also avoid the frustrations of nothing clicking and nothing working all of the time that's just like burdening you, and all of the opportunity cost of simply hoping and praying that you're going to make it. Instead of all of that, let me give you my step-by-step roadmap, plus the entire end-to-end go-to podcasting system with proven frameworks, techniques, and strategies to successfully start and launch a podcast that will quite literally blow up your brand online. And let me teach you how to stand out from the pack and create something of extreme value for your connection-deprived audience and hungry future customers. So by now, you're probably wondering, well, how can I get it ASAP? Well, you're in luck. When our course launches on August 1st of 2020, you'll be able to purchase it for not $2,500, which is only 1 month of working with us, not even half of that at $1,250, and not even half of that again at $625, but only $497. And what's even more exciting is that today, for an extremely limited period, you have the rare opportunity to pre-buy the course at our special pre-launch price of only $297. I'll say that again. For only $297, you'll get access to the entire 8-week program. And to make things even better, you'll be covered by our 365-day money-back guarantee. So our 365-day guarantee gives you a full year to try out the course risk-free. We are so confident that you'll get the results that we give you an entire calendar year to complete the course and implement the teachings. And if you're not pumped with your results within a year, despite doing all of the work, you'll get a full refund. For details on our policy, please feel free to head to the section Refund Policy PodcastPower101 in our Terms and Conditions page on our website. And here's the link. So to recap, when you enroll for the course today at only $297, you'll receive 8 easy-to-follow training modules, 24 in-depth video lessons, hours of engaging podcast instruction, professionally produced worksheets, plus 3 exclusive bonuses worth $243. This is a tax-deductible expense under the continuous education category, and you'll receive our 365-day money-back guarantee. Now, warning, this pre-launch price will not be available for long. In fact, we're already contemplating taking it down because of all the interest we've already gotten. So click the link below right now that says claim your special offer now, and we'll see you inside the course on August 1st. Now, please note, when you purchase the course today for $297, you will not receive instant access. The course launches on August 1st of 2020, and this is the exclusive pre-launch price that we're giving you today. On August 1st, you'll receive instant access to the course via email and can get started. We'll see you on August 1st. And lastly, as promised, here is the link to get instant access to the podcasting cheat sheet from today's free training. Enjoy, peers.